Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com, thechrisvossshow.com. Hey, thanks everyone for tuning in. We certainly appreciate you guys as an audience for being here. Be sure to give us a like, subscribe to us on YouTube, hit that bell notification button, go to iTunes, Google Play, and the TuneIn app to take and subscribe to the podcast. Please tell your friends, neighbors, relatives, dogs, cats, mistresses, pool boys. Share the podcast with your friends. Tell them to subscribe. And be sure to go to patreon.com/Chris Voss to support the show. Anyway, I'm here with another wonderful guest. We've had him on multiple times, and he's always great to have on, and we get to pick his brain. It's Tim Forrest. Tim is a consumer product brand and distribution visionary with over 30 years of experience transforming businesses by optimizing marketing and sales systems and driving innovation leadership. Tim's effort have driven over hundreds of millions in new revenue and company value, along with working with a third of the Fortune 50. So that's pretty darn awesome. Tim, welcome to the show again, buddy.
All right, Chris, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on today. Thank you.
Yeah, it's always good to have you on. You're becoming one of those things. We're gonna have to get a frequent guest member robe or something.
I like that T-shirt. Yep,
on it.
I want the coffee mug as well. Hat, anything. I'm happy. I'm all game.
Probably going to be an SNL robe, like type thing with the 5 year, 7, whatever. So, Tim, we want to talk about some stuff about negotiating, and I know you've done a lot of negotiating deals. Let's talk about what that is and what it's about.
Sure. Yeah, that's something that I've done. A lot of people that I've worked with, I realize they don't have a lot of experience in negotiating. I've been literally negotiating. I've learned, some of the best in my industry over the last 30 years, and I've ended up negotiating approaching $1 billion in deals, anywhere from television, because I'm in consumer products, but also I've got involved with television shows and media and all sorts of contracts around branding. But so many people really don't understand negotiating. They don't the way that I do it anyway. And I thought it's interesting, and I've enjoyed sharing that with my clients and folks that I work with. So I thought it'd be fun to talk to you about negotiating, because I know you have quite the background as well in real estate, and I'm sure there's negotiations that went on with your real estate mortgage closings, along with other deals that you were able to secure with your other businesses.
Most of my tough negotiating tactics involve being in relationships. Oh! But I don't want to take out the garbage.
I'm not a very good negotiator when it comes to that kind of stuff. I take the garbage out. Luckily, my son's gotten old enough that I get to delegate that. But for the most part, but yeah, I'm not. My tactics don't work too well in that arena.
I don't think anyone's does. So, what are some of the keys, utilities, or ways you use negotiations to really work well?
Yeah, the first thing is not to negotiate. And almost it reminds me. I know you've been. I don't know, thinking about Zen, and I know martial artists. I like to compare it to fighting, but if you can avoid a fight, run away from it. And so much of what I do is the work before you go into the negotiation, so that I can avoid a negotiation. I can close the deal very easily. And so that's probably 75% of my time is spent in work prior to negotiation. And when I do that, it makes it go so much smoother, and I'm able to get what I want. And also, when done correctly and you put the time in, you're going to walk away with what you want from the deal. You're going to end up closing quicker, and you're going to make a lot more margin, and you're going to be more profitable, and you're going to end up making more money when you spend the time ahead of time, instead of thinking that there's some mind trick we can do, or I'm going to talk aggressively or fast or do some body language and convince them to go my way. And that's been the most important and successful part in my efforts, is what I do ahead of time.
Yeah, there's so many people that when they approach negotiations or a buy-sell situation, they literally walk up and they go, here's what I do, here's what you pay me, and people go, I don't want to pay you that. Okay, see you, bye. and that's the length of their negotiations. I get that a lot in life.
Yes.
The other thing I get a lot is people, especially this happens with women, where they do that. They just go, okay, it's overdone, and they walk off. Now I'm referring to this in business deals. That of course doesn't work in relationships. But when it comes to business, I'm always surprised by that. And one of my other frustrations with business is people don't realize that it is a negotiation, and that you should come back with a counteroffer. Like, I'm amazed how many people just wander off without counteroffering in negotiation.
Yes.
But you're right. Laying down a pre-fabric or pre-work of leading up to negotiation does a lot better, because if you're selling your stuff and building a case for what people need and establishing in the client's minds, need and desire and everything else, that certainly plays a lot more if they're already sold by the time you get to the negotiating table.
Exactly. And so right off the bat, you just mentioned relationships. So what can you do to build a relationship with the folks that you're going to be negotiating with before you get to the table? And so, can you meet them at a non-combative or non-confrontational setting, so that when you lead up to the negotiation, it's set. So that's one of the beauties of trade shows. Like you were just, you do so well with your efforts in Las Vegas, and then I know you're coming up here, going to South by Southwest, and events like that. If you can meet someone that you're going to end up doing business with in an event like that, and cement a relationship, you play golf, go out some drinks. If you can go to a music concert with them, oh my gosh, and then you end up at a negotiating table with the same person later on, it's going to make that negotiation go so much smoother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it is amazing to me how much people don't get nowadays. It really is about building relationships with people. And they just, even now, more so where, we throw people away with the left and right swipe of a computer, phone screen.
Yes.
It's amazing how many people don't get that build a relationship with me sort of thing. I say, I've had a lot of people that hit me up for deals or whatever, and they're too easy to scamper off. They don't know. The other thing I get is, stuff is on LinkedIn all the time. I get all sorts of offers and deals, and no one wines and dines me as a buyer.
Yes.
No one works me over and wines me, dines me, and tries to build a little bit of relationship before they try and take me to bed. And
exactly.
It's just amazing how many. The other thing is too is laying the pre-negotiation fabric, like you're talking about, or groundwork, relationship building. Part of that, it helps you in qualifying too, qualifying the customers, seeing how well they, seeing, number one, if they have the money to pay you.
Yes.
Usually what I'm sniffing for. And then number two, how much money they can pay you. That's the other thing that I like in pre-negotiations, and relationship building. You can also determine if you want to work for people long term. I've had people ask me for bids, and after getting to know them a little bit, I've gone, we're not going to work well together. I can really tell you this. We may as well not even negotiate, because I'm not sure there's enough money you can pay me to work with you.
Exactly. And that's so, and if you can learn that early on, you can move on quicker and not even be tied up in the negotiation. And then also, I want to learn as much as I can about their business and think about how much value can I bring to that business, so that in turn I can negotiate and make sure that I end up with value from that relationship we're talking about. So I want to understand their business. I want to understand their market. If it's an employee of a business, I want to try to understand how they're managed by their bosses. And so what kind of management structure is he on? How does he get paid his bonus? So if he's getting bonus, if he owns the business, we know we have to drive revenue. If he is an employee, though, he's going to be managed in a certain structure. And so there might be things that we can do to the deal that can sweeten it specifically for him and push our contract to completion just simply by understanding, you know, who he is and how he's managed, and that comes into a lot of play. I've dealt with so many people, and they don't realize if you're not dealing with a business owner, they're the employees of a business, even, you know, even executives of the business are so concerned about risk. And so how can we do risk reversal techniques in order to take away that risk so that person doesn't feel if anything goes wrong, it's going to hurt them. And that's something that you know, when you're not dealing with owners of businesses, that's a really important key in a lot of my negotiations has been to take away the risk.
Yeah, most definitely. There's some other things I like about building relationships. But yeah, I'm always surprised. And like I said, I do find in business 9 times out of 10 when I'm dealing with women, that I'm not kidding you, 9 times out of 10 when I'm dealing with women. Now, I don't deal with a lot of corporate women. I do deal with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of small agencies, things of that nature. And it might be the corporate women are kind of more used to the whole negotiation thing. So that may be, I don't know. I haven't been able to judge it obviously clearly enough. But they really treat the negotiation process like hey, do you want to do this? No. And then they wander off, and you're like, you don't realize that you just haven't sold me enough on what you're doing to make me pay the money, or vice versa. Right. I'll offer things, or if I'll bid out some consulting or something, and if it's out of their range or whatever, out of their comfort zone, they'll just go, okay, and they'll wander off, and you'll try and ask some questions, and then you can't get the other side to reply. Whereas men do tend to kind of go back and forth and understand the negotiation process a little bit more. At least that's what I find in my experience. But I am surprised. I mean, in today's world where, you know, you and I grew up in an age where, you know, you had to go knock on doors to sell stuff, and you had your client accounts. You drive out to the place, you bang on the door, try and get past the gatekeeper secretary to get to the buyer of the facility. And of course, getting a call put into him, or return call from him, is like, you know, you feel like when the gatekeeper finally lets you into his office, after you've waited for hours and visited like 20 times, you feel like you're meeting with like the president or like God or something when you go into that buyer. And people don't have that now, where they don't build relationships with buyers, at least from what I see. People just have a real short-term sort of wham bam, thank you ma'am sort of approach to negotiating.
Yeah, people are going, if you're going for smaller deals, that's kind of in the way that works. But the really big deals, it takes a while. Like you know, I've been fortunate to negotiate multi-million dollar contracts. I've negotiated and created probably more $1 million businesses from nothing than anybody I know. I'm sure there's lots of folks that are listening that better, that might do more. But those deals don't come easy. For instance, I was working in Toronto, Canada, on a contract. The initial order was $1 million, but it took us 2 years to negotiate that, and we lost that deal 3 times. So the buyer canceled my order 3 times during the negotiation, and at any of those times, if I had not come back to the table and tried to, you know, work through those issues and problems, we would not have had a contract. You know, we wouldn't have earned that $1 million initial order, which is, in my industry of consumable products, is giant. I mean, we're not talking about big screen TVs. We're talking about, you know, packs of gum and you know, little $2 items. And so it's a mass, you know, it's a very, very big deal. And so you have to overcome those problems. And if you just walk away, we'd never had the $1 million deal. Just wouldn't have happened. It didn't, but it took 2 years to get to that point to make it happen.
Yeah, and you never know what deals are going to come out of the woodwork. I have some deals where I'll bid on them, send them a proposal, and they just don't seem too interested. They understand what I do, and I've made them a few counter offers, and just won't go anywhere. And then, like, sometimes 6 months to a year later, they'll pop back on the radar and go, "We have money, we want to spend it," and you're like, "Okay, great."
Exactly. And timing is so important.
So yeah, you never know where some of these things are. One of my biggest. Go ahead.
I was just saying, it may not be the actual contract, actual timing, just like you mentioned. And what you just saying, one of your biggest what?
One of my biggest challenges, and I'm not saying that as I have a problem with it, but I'm always just trying to perfect it and get better at it, is when I'm doing my proposals to people that negotiate our pricing, the number one thing I want to have them understand before we go to a money position is, number one, do they understand the work I'm going to do for them and what it entails and the value of it? And number two, making sure that they understand why it's a value to them. I guess I mixed the one and two there. And a lot of times I don't like to bring up price and negotiate price until I know that they have a clear understanding of what I'm doing for them, how I'm doing it, and what the results are going to be. Because a lot of times, sometimes you're communicating with people and they're still not getting what you're going to be doing for them, or what they think their understanding of what you think you're going to do for them. Some people don't realize they just don't communicate effectively well what they're offering to do for people, and people just aren't getting it.
Yeah, and that's the big drop, I think, in negotiations, is not really understanding the value that you bring to the table. And so if they don't understand your value, then you can't derive your needed value, or the money from the deal.
Mm-hmm. And if they can't, I've dealt with people that sometimes we've explained it to them a million times and they just have a comprehension problem. But usually what I do is I look in my communications of everything of laying the groundwork for a deal is, do they really understand what we're trying to do? Do they have any questions? And also, do they see the value in what we're trying to do and how it will help them? And usually once that's accomplished, then it makes the negotiations for pricing a whole lot easier. But if you don't have that cleared out of the pipe and have them have a good concept of what you're doing for them, you have some real challenges at selling that price point.
When you get into that position, it's not, it's difficult. You have to overcome that with different communication vehicles. One of the ways that I like to overcome it is, everyone likes to overcome it, is being referred into a deal. If a referral brings you there, or a testimonial, it will open the eyes of the buyer so they understand a lot better what it is you bring. And so there's not a lot of explaining to do if they've reached out, they have an issue with someone else that's used your services.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's always tough. So what are the things you recommend on negotiating?
In negotiating, well, the timing is so important, like we've been talking about, and we've been talking about trying to get to a deal. But one of the areas that everyone, I think, needs to understand, and new negotiators or people just getting into negotiation, is that you do need to know when to walk out. And I've gotten faster and better at not closing a deal and or walking away from a deal faster than I ever have. I can walk away from a deal now in a minute or 2 minutes, just from, I just can tell, just my gut reaction. So a lot of what I do is, I don't know if it's necessarily smart. You're not supposed, the advice is not to allow the emotion of the negotiation to impact the negotiation. At the same time, I pick up, since I've been involved in so many negotiations, I automatically pick up different indicators that instantly kind of give me an idea of what's happening, and I'll walk away from a negotiation. I was working with some celebrity lawyers out in Hollywood. Robert Thorne is one of the. He was the attorney manager of the Olsen twins that helped to make them so successful. And it took me forever to get through the negotiations with them, but eventually we ended up not working together, and it just wasn't a good fit, and I wasn't really willing to go along with the terms. So you just need to know that. And then later on, I was working with some other. It seems like celebrity Hollywood attorneys are so difficult to negotiate with. I just very quickly say goodbye, because I just don't need that in my life, and just kind of go on to the next opportunity. But the thing, but you do need to know when to kind of to walk away from that. The other thing that is so important is I try to, in negotiations, when you do get into the negotiations, is try to lay it all out. And so if you're buying something, an important piece for the buyer is to have everything lined out. You want line item pricing, or you want to understand, break it down as many components as you possibly can. Whereas if you're selling, it's just the opposite. You just want to give them a price. Here's your price, and go out the door. You want to give as little education as you can about the components or the process of what you're doing. But when you're buying something, it's so important. That's what I spend a lot of time on, is when I'm buying products, is to break that down in its component pieces, so that I can understand what the pricing on it. And then also, when I'm buying something, my kids just can't stand to be with me if I ever buy anything, because what I do automatically, and I don't know, anytime someone gives me a price, I'll automatically make a physical response to it, like, oh, wow, what do you mean, that price? Even if it's an okay price, I still am going to respond to it in some sort of way. I'm going to give them a shrug or an indication that it's too high. And if you don't do that, what I found with professional people that are, if they're sales guy, if they do this all the time. If you don't do that, they automatically go, oh, okay, that price is okay. And then they'll start adding on new prices. Well, I didn't tell you about this, or I forgot to let you know there's a delivery charge. Oh, and by the way, there's a special unwrapping charge. And then, okay, that's okay with you. So then Saturday delivery bonus on top of that you have to pay for. So you've got to stop them. And now I do that. I'll do that just locally, just with things for the family. And it's just something I've done. Have you ever noticed anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I do hate is if I go into negotiation or proposal and the yes comes almost too quickly, and you left money on the table, and I hate that. Yeah. I hate that. That, or if you found out they would have paid more money or had paid more money, or sometimes I'll find out a client actually hired somebody else to do something along the same lines of what you're doing, but maybe on a different division, and they're paying the other person way more than they paid you, and you're just like, I screwed the pooch on that one.
Yes. So. Yeah. Exactly. When it's like quick, like exactly what you're saying, and that leads into the point of when I'm working with programs, I always have basically a street list price. Then you work off that price, and you you negotiate promotions off that price to take the price down. And I don't ever change my price, but I do provide promotions against that price for performance. And so let's just say we're going to end up, say an item's $100, and I know that I want to sell it for $70. I'll end up and provide 3 different promotions for performance. So if you're you can make up if you're in a certain trade class, I'll give you $10 off. If you buy so much of this, I'll give you this amount off. And so it reaches that point. And instead of just negotiating,
I just turned 50, Tim. Can I get a senior discount off you there, buddy?
Exactly. That's exactly. Okay, we're going to give you the senior discount. And then when a new buyer comes in, he's a college graduate, and he's 25 years old. You don't get the senior discount. You got to go back up, so you get to raise the price $10.
Yeah. Put on a student loan. Get that interest.
Exactly. Exactly. And you're talking about it's an interesting thing when you're starting to talk about the money piece. A lot of sales organizations, particularly like, say if you're dealing with just anything, they'll like to take you out of the idea of your money and start to use payment gimmicks and money tricks. And so, for instance, you and I both, you've seen this when if you're looking at a vehicle, instead of talking about the price or buying it, they'll either put a monthly price or a lease price in front of you. Say, well, you can drive this for off the lot for $299 a month, but you're not negotiating the price of the vehicle. They might it might be the same price. They might have even raised it $5,000 in cost, but they just added additional months to the payment, or it puts you into a lease when you actually thought you're buying the car. And so they'll play payment tricks to where you're not really talking about real money. You're talking about like a penny per pound. It might be £1 million, so it's really a $10,000. I mean, it's a $1,000, actually $1,000 less in cost, or $1,000 more at that penny gimmick. So, but they're playing with the money and trying to take your mind, to take you off of the fact that you're actually dealing with real dollars, and to put it into some other terms or some other way. So you're less likely to manipulate. You're less likely to argue that point.
Well,
when you were working with
mortgage negotiation off base when it comes down to it. On the person who's not approaching it that way. One of the things we used to use, because I sold cars for years as a kid, and we had I can't remember what they call it, like the 3 or 4 box system. And on the page, we'd have it was 3 or 4 negotiating positions. Let's see if my old brain can remember them all. The one box was payment. The other was price, full price, invoice price, whatever the hell, total price. The other box was the monthly payment that they wanted. Or hold on, did I do that right? Monthly payment, full price, down payment is another box. And then all the undercoating, carriage, and crap add-ons, all that sort of stuff, negotiable. And so what you would do with the 3 or 4 box system was whichever they were hot buttons on, you try and get them off that hot button by working them by the other negotiating positions. Of course, payment was the big negotiating position. People would be like, well, I want this payment really low, but I want you also to give me invoice. And you'd play games with that in negotiations and everything else to get them off of, or somebody would be like, I want to see the invoice with the lowest price I can get for the car. And then you'd be like, but can you afford the payment? Oh yeah, I can. Well, prove it. Let's talk about that. Or, well, that's great. We can give that to you. How much do you have? Like 2 or 3, 4 or 5 grand that you can probably put down on the car. Our sales manager, I think, used to always make it be like, it was like 30% or something. And sometimes be a real asshole and just go for half, because no one's carrying around like 12 grand. And he'd just be like, you know what? We can give you that card invoice if you can put 12 grand down. And the people are like, I don't have 12 grand. You're like, okay, well, what we need to do is try and figure out how much down you can put down. But I don't want to talk about down. I want to talk about the price of the car. But the price of the car is also dependent on how much down you can put down, because it's cash and blah, blah, blah. And, I remember what it was. I think it was financing terms is the 4th part. I don't know. Financing terms and undercarriage, all that crap they sell, that would be the 4th part. So you'd talk a little bit about interest rates, and then of course the finance manager would do the same thing. He'd be like, interest rates, payments, price. It was like a duplicate game. It was just crazy.
That reminds me of Walmart, because I think Walmart's played that same. Walmart understands, and they're so concerned about pricing that they've played that game with me and my clients when we've gone in. I've actually had a buyer at Walmart. He wants a good price. But what he would do to take the focus off negotiating the price, he actually took my business card, wadded it up into a ball, and then threw it at my face and said, "That's what I think of your company." Now, trying to get me upset and not to be really focused on exactly what you were just saying, the issues of price and cost per pound.
That's pretty brutal, man.
That was very, and I remember it to this day. Well, I had another national account that did the exact same. I mean, it didn't do the same thing, but he took I had worked on this presentation for 3 days. I mean, 3 solid days. I built basically a notebook for him, and it was like, to me, it was like a work of art. And so I was so proud to go there to this national account with thousands of locations. It was a big, big deal for me. Laid it on the desk, laid his copy there, and laid mine, and I'm getting ready to go through it and like show off how smart I was. And he takes the presentation and throws it across the desk at me and says, "I'm not reading that book. You know, what are you doing, Tim? I'm not going to sit here and read this thing." And so he said, if you want to work with me, you need to get a piece of paper out, and I'm going to tell you 4 things I want from you. And then I followed what he suggested to do. That now his name was Peter. He became my first $1 million account. This is over 20 years ago, but both of them, they will be brutal, and they're used to dealing with very, very skilled negotiators, and so that's part of what goes into it.
That's pretty wild, man. I can't imagine negotiating with Amazon or Walmart.
Yeah, but in general, it's not. It's in no way. It's not normally like that.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, yeah, it's the deal is number one is you don't bring your CEO to those negotiations, so it's not as though. So that's part of the insulation from any negotiation is that the positions go back and forth, and you have competitors, and you really are pretty well prepared for the negotiation when you go in there. There's not a lot give and take. You pretty well know your position, and it's either going to happen or not happen. There is some, but it's very refined, and it's very very, I hate to say it is stressful, but it's not anywhere near confrontational as those 2 situations I just described. Those are very unusual situations that occurred.
That's pretty wild, though. So what other things can you tell us about negotiation?
What else? One of the things, we've talked about, I like to think of a negotiation in 3 areas. You've got the before the negotiation, the during the negotiation. We've talked so much about the tactics. We've thrown out a lot of things, and then the what I like to think after the negotiation. And if you're unable to come at an agreement, my first position, if I'm not able to secure an agreement, is to come back and shoot for another time and just simply come for another date, either a month in the future or some other time. Bring some other people into the negotiation and just delay it and come back, because sometimes timing is the only issue. The other thing that so many people I work with run into is they don't want to negotiate at the proper time, and then they think the follow-up letter or email is the time for them to do a negotiation, and it's not. It's not there. You want to negotiate either face-to-face, email, or over the phone, and then the letter of agreement, in my opinion, is just simply you just simply write out what you've already agreed to. So many people get hung up. They think that they can come to reach some agreement in person or over the phone, and then they follow that up with an email with additional demands, and that's where so many negotiations go wrong. Generally my negotiations, we come to an agreement, then the email or the contract that I end up seeing is a direct reflection of what we discussed, and it's just a letter of agreement. It's not really a contract per se or new terms, and so it goes very smoothly. So many people want the email and the contract to do negotiating for them instead of doing the work of talking about it, taking care of the relationship, and being solid with them at the time, and determining what the terms are, instead of just, well, I'm just going to send I'm going to send this contract. Hopefully they'll sign it, and I'll end up getting what I want out of the deal. That's not negotiating from my perspective.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting to me. I'm trying to think of any good negotiating stories over my life that I've had, but yeah, it's always surprising how people don't build relationships these days, and how negotiating is really something that a lot of people don't do. Like I said, I really hate it when sometimes I'll offer a proposal to somebody, and I'll be like, okay, so you got that? Any questions? No, fine. And then they won't counter back at you. Now, sometimes I do get people that they're fishing. One thing I do it's interesting that's always worked for me is I never publish a price list of what I'm willing to do for people. I don't know if that's good or bad, so maybe we can discuss this, but I don't
I think that's bad.
What's that?
I think that's bad. I think it's bad
okay.
because printed prices, price sheets, forms, uh, price list, and you know, not negotiated price list, but what your standard price is, like just like a rack rate. When you go to a hotel and you look on the back of the hotel door, you see that price. You might have paid $129, and it says on there $299 a night. You should have some printed price, and that is part of avoiding a negotiation, and where you point to, well, this is the price. This is what we offer to people. And then just like you with the used cars, you said you had those 3 boxes with prices already in there. That's part of setting.
Well, you don't start out with prices built in there. You start building a relationship with the client as you're showing them the car, test driving. And so there's a whole setup that you're doing. I mean, when sometimes I get some guy who walked on the lot. He's like, I want that Beretta right there. Give me the invoice price. And you're like, well, we got to find out if you like the Beretta first. So we got to have you test drive it.
Right.
And then you walk around. But during you're building a relationship with the client. You're asking about their kids, if their wives, if they have kids, it's important because how many car seats are in the car, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. But Chris, isn't there a price on the car, like a sticker price on the car he's going to ride in?
There's a sticker price on the car. I've built, over time, I've just been so much more successful at building a relationship with a client before I quote them prices, and it forces us into a relationship.
I totally agree with that.
From there, I can pre-sell. But then the other thing is I'll be honest, I'm smelling if you have money or not, or how much money you have. If you have more money, I'm probably going to offer you a higher price and charge you more because I know you've got the money for it. I'll explain the whole reasoning to you. The reason I do that, because I get asked that all the time. Usually the only people who want like price lists from me are other social media competitors or consultant competitors who just want to know what my pricing is. And so that's mostly them. Most people, they'll ask me what my price is, and then of course we go into negotiations from there. But the reason I never publish a price list is number one, not to help my competitors in any way, shape, or form. Number two, not to get myself lowballed, because sometimes in building a relationship with a client pre-final negotiations, I'll find that their expectations or their workloads are far more than what I anticipated in that thing. I'll give you an example. There was a company I went to work with that was a shirt company, and I gave them my basic flat rate price. And this is a long time ago, back when I was starting out. And I didn't really equate, I told them what I do for them, but I didn't equate that they were a company that loves having meetings. And not only that, they were a company that, they really didn't understand the value of my time because they were employees. And so because they were paid, they really didn't understand that taking hours of my time costs money. Because I don't get a flat fee. It's everything's based upon the time at work I've got to do for client. So one of the problems we had was they wanted to start having these meetings like all the fucking time. I remember one time the owner called me up and she goes, "Hey, Chris, love to have lunch with you across town." And I'm like, 4 hours out of my day, you're eating up a ton of the budget. You can either spend a lot of time talking to me and I don't know, talking about stuff or whatever. But one of our other problems we had was it became a situation where I wasn't dealing with the one buyer or the one person I negotiate with. They kept bringing in all these other cooks in the kitchen. And they're like, "Hey, Chris, can you do a conference call so you explain to everybody else what we're doing this week?" And I'm like, "Again this week? Like, why can't you just go tell them? Because bringing me in is costing you more per hour, which I don't mind charging, but I've got to charge you more." So one of the reasons I do that, where I try and get a good idea as to what I'm getting into, is I try and pre-qualify that time and see if there's something that's going to bite me in the butt towards them, getting me, paid more properly for my services.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, the goal of working to avoid negotiating on prices, printed gross prices and not discounted, because you don't ever want to have discounted prices floating around. is what I suggest. I just think that it just for the situations I've worked in, it just works out better, and it just gives you an additional stick. I hate to say that, a stick to beat over the buyer's head. No, but it's actually just an additional support for your pricing, and so but you negotiate from that in a win-win basis for the for the benefit of all.
We should have I understand. We should have a whole podcast on this debate, because I'm still going to hold them on my side. The other reason I like it, I have a list of all these ideas, but it's still a little early in the morning for me, and so I'd have to write them out pre-hand. But part of the reason I don't price it is because I want to find out if you're a real buyer or not, or if you have money. It's also one of the way I wash out the people who are just pricing me, who are my competitors. Because if you say, hey, Chris, send me your price list, and I'll be like, well, let's talk about what you really want done. Once I talk to you about what you really want done, I'm going to sniff you out.
I don't want a price list floating around. I don't want price list floating around, just like you're saying. A price list should be kept and reserved for the end of a discussion. And then you're talking about value, and then only at the end says, oh, by the way, we need to take care of this issue. That's kind of the mentality that I want to have. Just like you shared earlier with pricing. Pricing is last. You really want to get to all the issues and then come and make sure that you're covered when it comes to the pricing.
And like I say, is if I know you're a lot richer than some other clients, I'm probably going to hit you with a whole lot more in my bid. The other thing is, too, is I know that somebody...
That's terrible.
I know, isn't it horrible? I feel awful about it, really.
Are you going to deliver more value? Are you going to do more for them, take care of more areas?
Technically, somebody who has more money is going to want a little bit more babysitting and a little bit more hand-holding, and they're going to want a little bit more care because they're used to being spoiled a little bit more. So I've tend to found that those type of clients that can spend more tend to want more. And they're going to want a little bit more babysitting. They're going to want a little bit more hand-holding. They're going to want more lovey-dovey. Mainly because they're spending a lot of money and they're used to being babied and taken care of.
I had a client. I didn't realize it. I didn't know who he was at first when he hired me, but he, very quickly I learned. But he was worth more. He and his brother were worth more than $150 million. They were grandsons of some very wealthy people, and so you're absolutely right. The demands that he specifically placed on our relationship were unimaginable to anything I've ever run into prior or since, and it's just you need to charge accordingly. You have to.
Yeah, I've just found if people are worth more, they're going to expect a little bit more. They're going to need a little bit more babying, a little bit more love and care, and they know they're spending a lot of money, so they expect that. You know, if I have somebody who's giving me chump change and the basics of what they can barely afford, and they're trying to squeeze that amount out of their noggin and their budget, they're going to be a little bit more compliant when I go, hey man, we're burning this extra hours over budget. I either have to adjust the pricing or you know, you've got to try and handle stuff more on your end, or I have a thing where with my clients where I don't mind if you send me questions over email, but if you want to burn phone time and live time in the time that you want it now, when you want it now, whether it's me answering an email in an hour or sometime today, that's a total different pricing situation and stuff.
Here's the other, Chris, the other side of this. We were joking around about pricing and folks. But if I had not had a package that was priced accordingly for my $100 million man, my client, that was where he and his brother were worth 150, he was probably worth 75 million. But if I wasn't priced at the top of the line of the business, he would not have hired me. If I had a lowball price that I charged, before, I luckily had a mentor that had helped me on my pricing schedule. And if I literally had clients, a couple of years before that he would never even have considered me a credible consultant because my pricing was so low. He probably would have spent that. He probably would have spent that on a meal or somewhere.
Yeah.
It just
So I'm pretty sure when Donald Trump was hiring like attorneys to defend him, he wasn't like, "Can we just get the ones that pay are like $100 an hour? We just want $100 an hour attorneys."
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, anytime I've ever met a $400 an hour attorney, I'm like, they're probably worth their weight in gold. So yeah, or higher for that matter. I mean,
on my board, I've got an attorney. One of my good friends, is an attorney, and he's on the board of my company. And he worked in a 1,000-man law firm, and their billing rate for him was $660 before he started his own firm.
Per hour?
$660 an hour per hour.
Damn.
Crazy. But that's part of the negotiation. They negotiated, and the way they did that was what we were talking about earlier, from referrals, testimonials, and it was understood that what they were going to deliver on that with what was needed.
Now, one other point that I'd argue with, I'd argue with you on posting rates. Recently,
I didn't say posting rates necessarily like that. Not online.
Okay, having a rate sheet. I still don't have a rate. I still don't have a rate sheet either. The way you get my rate sheet is we go to negotiations and I give you a proposal. That's my rate sheet. So maybe that's what you're referring to.
Yes.
But like recently, I went on someone's website. It was a consultant and saw their pricing, and the problem was there wasn't a lot of value sell in the pricing. And I went, that seems like way too much money. It did seem like they were doing a lot of stuff, but they didn't sell well on be well on the value. They were more focused on telling me what the price was and stuff. So, yeah, if we mean the same thing, that when you go into negotiations, when I give an official proposal, that's when my pricing comes out. And the other thing I do, and maybe this is what you're referring to, I do a la carte option pricing when I give people pricing. I usually don't give people a flat, I'll do this for this. I give people an a la carte experience, which also, I mean, I learned this from Fleming's Steakhouse and every other place that you go with a la carte pricing. So I give a la carte pricing so you can choose different variants and options of what you want. But then, and so you can upscale your pricing far beyond what you may want to spend, or maybe you can, I can tempt the client enough to where they go, I want to spend this.
Chris, when I mentioned the trust fund kid that was my client, that was exactly what I did. Is I had this unbelievable, my highest tier pricing program. I did not think anyone who in the world could afford or would do this. From my perspective, that wasn't me that could afford this program. And so when I sent him exactly what you're mentioning, a la carte pricing program, he picked the top tier, and we went with that. I was like, oh my God.
It's like so many people undersell themselves, and I'll give people the increased pricing. The other reason that's good for a la carte pricing, where you give that high and low range, and of course you equate services to it, so they can see what values they're going to take and get, is if people start pushing into the other ranges, you can say, you know what, remember that a la carte pricing, what you want is more in this package. So realize that if you really want to keep demanding this, we've got to move you to the other package. And so it'll either help them just go, oh fuck, we'll pay them more, or we'll shut up and stay in our little place and quit wasting Chris's time beyond what he bid for us.
Right.
Clients are sometimes like kids. You have to corral them sometimes and go, you just stay right here, and this is where your budget is.
Exactly.
Because I love giving more value to my clients, and I try and make it a point to, but I also make it a point to make sure that they understand that this is a freebie, that this is something extra I'm giving them just because I love them, and that this shouldn't be expected at all times, because that's another training position you have to do with clients as well.
That's another negotiating issue. A lot of people are smart, and they intentionally take advantage. After the contract's negotiated, they come back for additional concessions after you're within the program, and that's an area that's always, that's all that you always have to watch for and have to try to prevent.
Yeah, the one thing I always try and prevent is when calls and chat are going to get out of hand. Like I say, I didn't get burned years ago, but it didn't bode well to have to tell a client, look, we either need to stop all the conference calls because they're not included in the price that we did, or we need to increase the pricing to affect what they want to do. These guys were, you probably work with some of these companies, but they were just conference call kings. And they loved to have a conference call once a day where everybody didn't have to do any work at their desk, and they just all wanted to sit on a conference call and yickety yak about bullshit and not do any work. That's really what they were doing with their conference calls. And it was just like, and you could just tell that they were just in there killing as much time as they could during the conference call. And then everyone was playing to an audience of one, the CEO of all the the stuff that they could, all the ways they could drag out the conference call, but also present themselves as, I'm the best employee you have. And it was the most insane thing ever to witness. And I'm just like, why do I have to be here?
From with people listening to us and what we've been talking about negotiation, I think it's important people understand that there are negotiation tactics and there's strategies and there's also a thought process to it, and realizing that it exists and that you can get better and you can improve your position so that you can negotiate better is really a starting point for a lot of people, particularly like the ladies that you mentioned. That would come up to you and just say, you just kind of walk away. No deal was done. There was no furtherance. It was just kind of a hit or miss. And I think a lot of the people, when you start thinking about younger folks, they're not really exposed to negotiation they're not exposed to any negotiation people. There's no mentors for them to learn from. And so they're out there kind of just blind going about it, not really understanding what negotiation is or what some of the tactics are that make them successful.
So we're in agreement. You should have so let's clear that up then. We were really at the opposite ends of publishing a price list. Basically, we shouldn't, I think we both feel the same. We shouldn't have an advertised price list out there in the public just floating around.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking for like professional services and things. What we're talking about, yeah, very high level, very expensive programs. Yeah, I agree with that. But the closer you get to consumer transactions, high volume transactions, lots of transactions, you do want to have that published, and there's very little there's no negotiation at that point.
Yeah,
and so. It's just real simple. There's the price, take it or leave it. I mean, it's just, there's no negotiation because you're almost at a commodity level, understand the market. But from, on professional services for high ticket items, things that we're talking about and things that are negotiated, you don't lead with a price. My point, yeah, I agree with you. I'm in agreement with you.
Yeah. It's interesting in dealing with people, and some people don't know how to build the relationships with you. That's one of the things I hate about LinkedIn, where you have these people that hit you up on LinkedIn and they call you up and they throw you a little pitch, and you're like, or like, well, on LinkedIn, sometimes they just go, hey, can we have a call? And you're just like, why do I want to spend an hour with you? And I'm kind of a jerk about it too. If you go right for my breast we're not even to the first date, you're picking me up at the bar on LinkedIn, and people be like, hey, can we have a call? And I'll be like, yeah, you can have a call. Let's see, I charge X number of dollars per hour to have a phone call with me for consultancy. You can have my hourly you can have my hourly fee. And then they're all upset. They're like pissed off because I think I reversed it on them. But I'm like, I don't really care. That's your problem. But it's always kind of funny when I flip that on them and go, yeah, you can have a call. I'm going to charge you for it. And what's interesting is I almost wonder sometimes if they, qualify on purpose, but they would actually go, I'll pay you for your hour call during your business. That's kind of, it's an interesting thing I've thought about. How much is what you're selling really all that worth? Would you actually pay a client to listen to you for an hour? It's kind of an interesting concept to think about, huh?
Wow. Yes.
I mean, certainly if I was hitting up certain CEOs or whatever, and I remember the good old days where, we would try and take buyers to lunch, so you could build relationships with them. I worked for a company when I was a kid called Car Concepts with a K. They were out of Illinois, Des Moines, Illinois. And, we would build relationships with shops like welder shops, mechanic shops, auto shops. And of course, back then there was more prevalency of them. And, I would have this big book that was like 12 inches thick of car products, of welding products, bolts, nuts. We sold the bolts, the nuts. We were basically like the Snap, who's those tool guys? Snap
on tools.
Yeah. Yep. We were like those.
The other
go around, we'd sell you the tools, and and I'd have to go into shops and work with people. I'd have to go into buyers' offices for big plants and manufacturing facilities and stuff. And then you'd have to make friends, and you'd have to know how to make friends with some of these guys that were really hardcore blue collar type guys. Here I am showing up in a suit, and these guys are blue collar guys, and it's like hanging out with a bunch of sailors sometimes. It was the 80s, 90s. And so, and you had to learn to make friends with them and get along. You had to learn to build rapport. I think that's one thing a lot of people don't build anymore is a rapport with each other. And people understand that sometimes it does come down to trust in negotiations, where people wonder if they can trust you. And they, and they get you, and they feel that you're actually going to deliver on the value that you have. Trust is a real big important factor in negotiations, because I've had negotiations where I've sold a value, I've sold everything the way I need to, but somehow I haven't gotten over the trust part. Sometimes I find that in my negotiations with Middle Eastern people. There's a big whole thing of trust in their thing, and maybe it comes from their marketplaces. And I know in their marketplaces, they're huge negotiators too, as well. And that's part of their culture.
But I think they're transactional in nature. So it's one deal and they're gone. Mm-hmm. And what I'm always thinking about is long term. How can I do not this deal, but how can I do 10 deals with this person down the road and continue that process? And so that's what the trust piece, I think, is so important, is to be the relationship. And that's where the value is. And that's how you're going to provide so much value to them over 10 deals. And then in turn, they're going to do the same for you. And then you're bringing, when you do that, you're bringing you're bringing implied warranty, you're bringing quality. It's going to make it much more profitable for both of you, because it's going to be easier to negotiate and contract and go forward.
Yeah. Yeah. It really makes a difference in everything. So as we round up, Tim, what other sort of advice do you have on negotiating?
We've covered so much. I think that's so important, and that's for me, that I think we both agree about relationships. How important building the relationship piece is. For me, the most important part, and this is what people they'd like to think of. So many folks want to think that there's a magic pill, like they can go in, wear the right suit, say the right words, and they'll get the magic contract signed at the high profitability. But really, the key for me to the contracts that I've secured that have been the best for my clients and for the project included so much effort and pre-work ahead of time. And sometimes that pre-work includes I've actually negotiated with other people within the industry so that I understand better the terms and what I need to do, so that when I go to the table with the actual client I'm interested in, I end up knowing so much more about the business, so that I can close that deal. But it's the pre-work and the education that I do ahead of time, so that I understand, and I can my goal is to guess and understand what the negotiation issues are going to be at the table, so I'm prepared for them, and I can close that deal. And then I like to end it and then reach an agreement. And then, following up on it, it's simply a letter of agreement. And I send that. There's nothing, no surprises there. And then able to go and do good business, deliver great value, and then get paid for it. Chris, what are some of your I guess your top ideas or top thoughts about negotiation or what we've discussed today?
For the most part, like I said, it's about building rapport and building a relationship, really discovering what the clients want and having a good understanding, asking a lot of questions. I have some clients that go, okay, so here's what we want, Chris, price that for us. Here's a proposal on that. And I'll usually try and come back to them to say, help me understand this a little bit more. Is this what you're trying to do or what you're trying to accomplish here? One of the things that I used to teach all of my salespeople, in fact, we used to demand it, was the first interaction they would have with a client, with the lead that we gave them. We had a huge telemarketing department that would generate the leads and then give them to salespeople. And the first question out of their mouth that I would teach my salespeople is ask the client, what do you want to accomplish? What do you want to accomplish? And in negotiations, understanding what the client actually wants to accomplish is a real big thing. I see so many people that come to me with like their prepackaged or pre-made services. And they go, this is what I do. And you're like thinking in your head that, well, I don't need that. And they go, okay, well, I'm out here. And they wander off. And sometimes they haven't explored how maybe they can adjust or customize their services to what you want. That's one of the reasons, like I said, I don't keep a public price list and I do everything custom. And I just tell that to clients too. They go, what's like a price list for you? And I go, I do everything custom. Let's talk about what you want, what you need. And that's part of the rapport building process in really establishing their mind that you give a crap, that you care, that you're really helping them try and accomplish what they want to accomplish. And I've unfortunately lost clients because I didn't do a good job of either helping them understand what they were getting for value or helping them accomplish what they wanted to accomplish. And I thought what I was trying to help them accomplish was what they really wanted. And sometimes it's not really there. You think you're there with, well, okay, so we have a memorandum of understanding what we both want to accomplish. But in the end, they maybe wanted some different results or some different metrics that you didn't understand they wanted. And then there's a problem with that. And of course, sometimes you lose them as a client. So
yeah, I'm the same exact. I had a client and I start my meetings now with, why did you agree to meet with me? Why are we talking right now? And then I let them talk. I actually have a client, this is going back several years, where I met with them, they hired me, they agreed. We started working, and then after about 6 months of working together, which I thought we were almost through with the agreement, because we've accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. They're like, Tim, why are we doing all this? This is really what I wanted to accomplish, and we haven't even done anything. And they never shared that with me, and I really didn't understand that early on. And so you're so right. I actually was spending time and their money with what I thought they wanted to do something that was not exactly what they wanted to accomplish. And it's just amazing that can happen. But you're so right. We want to do what we do so well, and then the client really wants to solve their problem.
Yeah, and so understanding the problem of the client, I used to have that. I teach my loan officers, my salespeople, what are you trying to accomplish, and then shut up and listen. Yes. Shut up and listen. Because so many people want to go, here's what I do for you. And it really need to pull back from that and go, what are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to do? And that's part of the whole relationship building thing. I'd probably write this out a whole lot better because I've thought about it over the years. And there's a purpose that I have to this that's multifaceted. So probably one of these days, I should probably write down all the features and benefits that I believe in negotiating in the way that I do. But that's part of building the relationship. And also it communicates empathy to them because they go, oh, Chris really gives a shit about what I'm trying to accomplish and making sure that he can design his service. This guy really seems to care. He's just not trying to schlub some sale off me. He really is trying to help me accomplish what I want to take and do, help understand where it is and what it is. And usually in my communication with clients, I'm looking for the things where they're having comprehension problems as to what they think I'm going to do for them, what I'm going to do for them, or how they think we're doing as we're going. I've had clients that for years have somehow forgotten what we were doing for them. And sometimes we have to re-enter, re-equating them. For instance, last night I was talking with a client who's like, we should start doing this. And I'm like, you don't realize we've been doing this all along and you've been paying for this. And so I have to reestablish in their mind, because I realize that they might be thinking about doing business with somebody else, or they're evaluating the cost structures of what we're doing. And sometimes you have to re-up what they're doing. But yeah, for me, spending a lot of time in the pre-sale, the pre-negotiation pricing part is important. And usually I don't want to talk about pricing until we've got everybody on the same page. Everyone's excited about what we're doing, and then we're moving on from there.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. We should probably have a few more of these negotiating podcasts, I think. Definitely, because this is something a lot of people struggle with. And I don't think I'm a master at it.
No, and I've got a and I would enjoy doing that again sometime, really, and going into more detail, and we can get in, focus if you want on concessions and really get into how to handle concessions, and like you were mentioning on how to structure the negotiation when you're at the table.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, Tim, I'm starting to lose you on the audio a little bit on the phone, so let's go ahead and wrap for now. Tim, tell us where people can find you on the interwebs.
Sure, yeah, timforrest.com. Also, you can. I'm on YouTube, my YouTube channel, youtube.com/ForrestTimothy. And then, but if you start with everything just at timforrest.com, you'll go to my blog. You've got Facebook as well. And then also, I'm one of the most prolific seascape photographers in the world over the last 5 years, and I'd love for people to see my seascapes at islandsunrises.com, and that's a personal passion of mine, and I love sharing it as well. And check out all my work for consumer product companies at timforrest.com, and then also check out my seascape photography.
All right, guys, there you have it. You do have to check out Tim's photography. It's really beautiful. It's just gorgeous and stuff. And I keep seeing it on my feed, which I really love, especially in the morning when you post it. You post them every morning pretty much. And yeah, they're just awesome. So anyway, guys, be sure to check out Tim. And of course, we'd love to have him on the show. I'm going to talk to him after the show about maybe doing some specialized podcasts that we can do where we maybe kind of compartmentalize or break down some of these things, and we just deal with the components of them and talk about the formats and how to approach them and put them together for the bigger picture of maybe negotiation and other things. Anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. We certainly appreciate it. Go to YouTube and follow us on YouTube. Be sure to hit iTunes, Google Play, and all those different formats that, of course, the Chris Voss Show is on. We certainly appreciate it, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.